asset valuations, and 146 identified some errors, which resulted in some changes that management have made. So that these are not particularly significant issues in the sense that they are valuation judgments, and the accounts are being updated for that. The work on council dwellings, which is 148, I would draw to your attention. There were some control points about valuation processes there, but again, no significant matters. Pension fund liability, which is a complicated piece of accounting, albeit not one that impacts directly on the general fund. There was an unadjusted error that we picked up on page 150, which is a minor variance, which is in relation to the audit of Kent Pension Fund, but nothing of any concern particularly. I mentioned IFRS 16. So I think overall, we're in a strong position to close off the audit well before the deadline. I'd like to thank the Finance Department for their support. I think just to give you an overview of the way forward on accounts, the government are bringing the backstop deadline forward. So it's January the 31st, 2027 for 25/6. And then from 26/7, it comes forward to 30th of November. So we're keen to recognise that that's important to get the work done and target 30th of November as a particularly important date, both in terms of how we work next year on the 25/6 accounts and then obviously into 26/7. So overall, I think we're in a good position. There's obviously some more work to do to bring the timetable forward. But happy to stop there, Chair, and take any questions that members have.
Thank you, Paul Dossett from Grant Thornton and Sherwood Island Head of Finance. So this is to resolve 1, that the annual government statement 24/25 is formally approved, Appendix 1. 2, that the statement of accounts 24/25 be formally approved, Appendix 2. 3, that the chair of the committee formally signs the 24/25 accounts. And 4, the letter of representation, Appendix 4, on behalf of the council be approved. And 5, that the auditor's annual report is noted, Appendix 6 and 5, and 6. That delegation is provided to the Director, Finance and Procurement to make any further minor changes that do not substantially change the 24/25 statement of accounts, which is not already in the audit findings report. If you're still with me, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Smith, thank you. And I open this up to the floor for any questions. My saviour, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if it's going to be a saviour question or not. It's not to do with the information that we've just gone through. It was actually on page 50. I was just a little curious about the cash flow statement, where the first 2 items listed on the 23/24 amounts are recorded as depreciation and impairment for number 1, and then the second one is recorded as impairment and downward revaluations. Just wondered, what is the difference between the two? Why is that not one figure? Just out of curiosity.
Thank you. So depreciation impairment is the annual charge where we effectively split the capital cost of an asset over the useful life, whereas the impairment and downward revaluations are where we've had to reduce the value of an asset because it's been impaired for some reason or the value of the asset has gone down. So they're 2 different things.
If I may quickly, so by my understanding, the first one is something that's going to be replaced and the second one is something that's not going to be replaced. In essence, you're downward evaluating its value with a view to actually.
So the first one is for assets they're all for assets that we hold, but the first one is relating to the cost of the asset and spreading that over its life, whereas the second one is to do with the value of an asset. So if the value is less than what we purchased it for, then we would have to reduce that value, which is an impairment.
Okay, coming at it from different sides. Thank you for that. Cheers.
Any further questions? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a question on the numbers, really. One of these variances that stood out because it was around 7 million, and the explanation didn't really make much sense to me. So if you could just clarify that on the self-financing debt on the HRA, which is on in the report, page 41 or page 7.
Yes, thank you. So if you recall, when we presented the draft statement of accounts, we referenced the fact that there had been an adjustment to do with the way we were accounting for the HRA minimum revenue provision. So we'd effectively been double charging the HRA because we charged the depreciation on the assets, and then we were also charging the principal repayments of the loans that are taken out for the HRA. But the MRP guidance states that we don't have to charge both of those. So we've changed that policy from 24-25, but we had budgeted for it, which has led to the variance.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I think that makes sense.
Eagle eye, Mr. Harvey. Well spotted. Anything else from the floor? I think it's safe to say there's a statement from Nicky Mills saying, in another very challenging year, the City Council has substantially delivered its financial plan for 24-25, and priority work is in place to deliver further savings in future years. And I think from Grant Thornton, we're satisfied that the authority has made proper arrangements for securing economy efficiency and effectiveness and use of the resources. So I think that's heartening. My bugbear, which I usually flag, prior year's recommendations. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So nil net book value assets still in use, council dwellings, fixed assets register, garage valuation assumptions, lack of evidence to provide verify periodic review of users and IT personnel access rights, lack of formal IT security policy and procedures, and errors within leasing workings. Can we make sure that those recommendations, we pay a lot for internal and external auditors, and quite rightly, can we make sure that we are on top of those recommendations and it doesn't flag up of not actioned next time?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's some of those have been actioned and the management responses are in there. But sometimes it's the timing, because the audits have previously been starting quite late after we've prepared the accounts. And then by the time that's finished and then come here, we're literally starting the next month after that, the next year's statement of accounts. So we haven't had enough time to put in place some of the actions that have been required. But that's why they're raised again, but they will be reflected in the next one as well. No, they won't be reflected in the next one as well.
Thank you. So I'm hearing all of these. I won't see these repeated again next time. That's a guarantee. Thank you. We've had a couple of questions on cash flow statement question and clarification of debt numbers. We need to go to a recorded vote. Oh, Councillor Smith.
Sorry, yes, just to clarify on that last point, is that likely to still be a risk given that there's a shortening in the year for the next audits with the legislative change on this that was mentioned? Because obviously you've got 2 successive years, I think, where this is going to be an 11th month and a 10-month timeline.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that because of what Paul Dossett had just been talking about, bringing it forward. Yes, that will help for the next years as well. So any recommendations, we've got a little bit more time to implement them.
Can I make a suggestion? Previously with internal audit, and it's really good now because now in the documentation we've got a list of recommendations, status of them, and manager response. Could we have something similar for the external audit so we have sight of it, and it just means that there'll be a reason, and it's very clear that to run alongside this, because it works very well with that new table that we have. I'm just wondering, as a suggestion, could we think about having that moving forward, that all the recommendations are in one place with more information on when they can get implemented?
Yeah, we'll take that away.
Okay, thank you. So we will go to a recorded vote.
And that's agreed unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. We will now move on to item 7, East Kent Audit Partnership Internal Quarterly Audit Report. That's page 254 to 290 of your packs. This is to note Nicky Mills, Director of Finance's report, and the officers Christine Parker, Head of East Kent Audit Partnership. And Chris is going to present. Chris Parker.
Right, thank you, Chair. The report table of the main reports that have been completed is on to page 257. This shows that 6 reports have been completed in the period. The assurance levels coming out at 2 being substantial, 3 being limited, and 1 limited no assurance. The Kanenko governance report, which is shown as substantial, does have further information in the confidential part of this committee and will be covered later on in the agenda. The 3 limited reports, being ICT network security, HRA rent arrears and fraud resilience review, all have a detailed management comment against the extract, which is shown in the report, and the business continuity and emergency plan. This one is shown as limited no, and in the follow-up there is some further information in the follow-up table. Moving on to the follow-up table on page 267. This shows the follow-up work that has been completed in the period. And there are 2 reports that are particularly interesting to the committee, which is housing tenants' antisocial behaviour. That was originally a partial limited assurance, and now after follow-up that has moved up to reasonable. Business continuity and emergency plan has moved up to an overall limited. We do have the Head of Policy and Communications here this evening, and I'm sure he'll be able to help out if there's any particular questions on that coming up. Then moving forward to page 272, this shows some of the detailed recommendations that are currently outstanding at the time of the follow-up. The markets and street trading were mainly all linked, being that there is a policy that is being introduced, and that had been delayed now to the middle of 2026. So that's the main reason for the outstanding recommendations on those. And then we have the business continuity and emergency planning points shown on that table as well. Then page 276, this shows the audit plan completed to the end of December. And just to bring the information up to date, sorry, that's to the end of September. To bring the information up to date to the end of December, Canterbury has now achieved 74% of the plan completion against a target of 75%, and Partnership 1 is 47%. The reason that one is being slightly behind is because of the shortness of the audit plan, and there is various work going on at the moment. So as that work's completed, the percentage completion will rapidly climb, and we hope that will be in the high 90s at the end of the year. Those are the main highlights within the report, and be pleased to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. So I'll open it up to the floor for any discussion and comments. Councillor Smith.
Just to say, really well done if it's gone up to 74 in that timeline, because I think on your points 7.1 on page 271, you did say it was 57.5 at the end of September, and by my count, excluding the Christmas week, that left you 85 days when you had the first 57 and a half in 132 days. So well done. That's a lot of work done in a short time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Watkins?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I had two sets of comments. Maybe I'll start with my favourite, Kanenko, and then we'll have a discussion about that, and then we talk about the other one, which is ICT. And for those who haven't heard me speak in recent months, one of various committees about Kanenko, fundamentally my concern is that as the frontline results of the services are in decline, so as examples, bin collection rates are going down, recycling rates are going down, the quality of street cleaning is going down. That is the kind of real world worry I have, and that's why I've been spending a lot of time investigating the various sort of governance issues that we have. So I'm only here as a substitute, but actually I see this is here it is, section 2.2 Kanenko governance, and that's just what I want to inquire about. On the scope of this, so we've got substantial assurance, which suggests things are okay, which instantly doesn't chime with what I have found in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, looking at in depth at various Kanenko issues. But I mean, just on the scope, we're saying substantial assurance for Kanenko, and it's meant to be about procurement compliance, contract award, contract management, all core elements of governance, but we've excluded procurement, which is like a massive part of what Kanenko does, because it's a big, complicated organisation, operation, spending over £10 million a year, buying in lots of services. As we know from later on in the agenda for tonight, there are some serious questions about procurement, which we will discuss. I'm flagging it up now that outside looking in, because I'm not a member of this committee normally, it doesn't look right that we've excluded procurement and then said, oh, everything kind of looks pretty good. But that's because we've excluded an area where we know there are problems. The second bit was, it talks about the fact that we've recently signed the contract, which was obviously a big thing for me and other opposition councillors, that the contracts that Kanenko has, the 3 big contracts with the council, hadn't been signed and sufficiently, we believe, scoped out with all the things we want, from service delivery plans through to performance management, etc., etc. Now, obviously, one was signed recently, but that was only for street cleaning and waste collection. And so my concern is, again, we're saying limited assurance, but we haven't got a contract signed for public toilets or for ground maintenance. So on the scoping question, it seems like a huge amount is excluded, and I would not be saying that Kanenko as a whole would justify limited assurance.
So you're asking a question of the auditors,
I suppose,
what
why
was
do we choose
captured
that
within
scope?
the audit and what was excluded, and why are you asking
Yeah.
if procurement was excluded? Why was it?
Yeah, and the other and ground maintenance and toilets. And should we be changing this report to reflect that more clearly, that potentially? So it was a long question, but there was a bit of context there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Part of it can be answered in a timing issue, in terms of when the brief was agreed with management and what we were going to be looking at. We later obviously became aware of the broader piece of work that was being undertaken in the procurement area. It became apparent that we could add no value to that at that time. That piece of work was being underway and was expert advice was being sought into doing that piece of work. Clearly, we wanted to bring attention here to what the substantial assurance is covering, and looking at the bullet points in the executive summary, the governance arrangements are all about to do with the setting up of the company and the board and the running of the company in that way. Each time we do these audits, I think that's another matter that we've picked up in terms of looking at Partnership One or any other LATCOs or companies that the council's involved in. Once we've done the initial sort of how's the company been set up, is it running, are the shareholders' agreements, all the reporting, all of that working in terms of governance, then we'll be probably looking more into doing the audits. And of course, at the next meeting, we'll be looking at the audit plan. Are we looking at street cleansing, refuse collections, grounds maintenance, and all of the services, and looking at the complaints and the performance management and the running of those contracts? So we sort of move forward once we've looked at risk management and corporate governance. I hope that helps look as to why we did the brief we did at the timing that we did it. Perhaps I can hand over if any other officers need to feed into that. So we wanted to be clear in the report what we are giving substantial assurance on, and those bullet points hopefully do give that information.
So am I right in thinking, Mr. Watkins, that when we speak on the work plan for the internal auditors, you'd like a focus on those areas that you've just mentioned, which Christine has just picked up, and when will that be inputted into the work plan so we can have sight of that?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, Chair, you know, these questions we can flesh out more on the CAC, so Kanenko Advisory Committee, I believe is what that stands for. But there's a huge overlap, isn't there, with your committee here. And I think you'd probably do a more deep drill into some of these governance issues than we would probably normally do. So without wishing to overreach, I think it would be good to look at that. And I would only just say, obviously, I'm not asking for anything to be duplicated that the other committee is doing. I do absolutely, you know, the order of things, as you said, that makes sense to me. So thanks for explaining that. But I still feel like it feels a little bit, when I read the audit scope, just the first line, you know, you're saying, you know, we're doing this to provide assurance on the adequacy and effectiveness of the controls established to ensure the council's good governance procedures in place concerning Kanenko, and these protect the council. But it doesn't. That doesn't say what your audit did was just look at the setting up of Kanenko. Actually, I don't have any particular concerns with that, although, you know, I look back 4 or 5 years and probably don't intend to, more just care about what's happening today at the front line and making sure that we are delivering as well as we possibly can do and getting value for money. So do you see my point? The audit scope sentence there, right at the top in 2.2.1, sort of suggests it is looking at the Kanenko arrangement now and what it's delivering now, not just the setup. If I read that, outside looking in, I think I would look at that and say, oh, Kanenko, you know, what it's doing day by day at the moment, substantial assurance. You have flagged that you scoped out the procurement bit, and that's fair enough. I'm just pointing out that's quite a big omission, but you flagged it, so fair enough. I just think it reads a little bit like, oh, you know, aside from procurement, things are okay in the day-to-day running of this. But you've just said that really the focus of your audit has been on the setting up of it. Is that fair?
Thank you, Chair. I think also if you look at the scope for improvement, which just goes on to the top of the next page, you can see the kind of things that we were looking at in terms of ensuring directors are fully aware of their responsibilities in the running of the company. I've lost it now. So those are the kinds of policies and processes that we're looking at in terms of the protecting, as it says in the scope, protecting the council and the officers. Thank you.
Yeah, and certainly the one about more regular reporting to the CAC is welcome. That is a good example of something in the here and now that needs to be done. So I'm glad you picked up on that. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to leave it to you, Chair, and other members of this committee to drive the work agenda. But I think, you know, if Robert Jones, who I'm substituting for, was here, he'd probably be quite supportive of that idea of looking at things that have not been considered hitherto.
Thank you. I think we're reading that there would be a request when this comes back to have a wider scope of an audit in that area. Naturally, external audit and internal audit are of their own, and they're not influenced by the council of what they do, and we can make suggestions for what. So I think there's sight from us that would be beneficial. because then it will give a rounder picture of the performance and the audit of Kanenko.
Thank you, Chair. Also, by just drawing a comparison, if I direct members' attention to page 278, this is the P1 internal audit plan. So we have got a governance review of P1 in there, obviously, another one, just to make sure that everything's working as the four councils, as owners of P1 would expect. But also you'll see the services that they're providing, those audits are also shown. And that was what I was indicating in terms of we'll look at the setup, we'll keep an eye on the setup, and then we'll move to looking at the services and doing the individual reviews that we will have always covered in the plan. That will come to the next meeting of the committee to consider next year's plan. Yeah, and I'll take your point about, clearly, I know we're skipping agenda items, but you'll notice in the later one, it does also talk about internal audit coming back to do the procurement work in next year's plan. So we're building that into the plan. We have all agreed that that's when the independent assurance will be on those arrangements will be provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I think further to Councillor Watkins' points and the scope of the report, I think I'd like to see more really on monitoring performance mechanisms for Kanenko. As Dan said, there's certainly been some issues with performance falling off, and the audit report simply says that the performance reports on functions provided by the company are presented to scrutiny committee every 6 months. But we don't really know whether those reports actually test any contractual compliance from Kanenko and whether there's any consequences from them. So I think that's something that possibly should be included in the audit as well. Do you agree with that?
Thank you. That will be the audits that I'm talking about when we look at those individual services provided by the company. Those are audits that we carry out for Thanet, Canterbury, Dover and Folkestone. They're audits that we would expect to be seeing in the plan coming forward. So yes, I agree.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you.
And how would that specifically be monitoring the performance?
Can I come in? So we look at the audits. Auditors have said we will be looking at that audit, and then we can ask questions on that. You mentioned at the scrutiny committee, those KPIs go to the scrutiny committee. So it's within that committee to ask questions on the performance of the company. It's in this committee, we look at finance, we look at what audits are brought to us and ask questions on those audits. So I think if your question is where and how can we scrutinise the performance, that's the scrutiny committee.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Just to comment on Councillor Harvey's point there, I think what you'll find is that when I've only looked at the one contract that's been signed, but there's lots of performance mechanisms in there which look really good. I suspect, because we haven't seen quite a lot of that data, certainly not in any systematic way with Unite, month on month on month, quarter on quarter on quarter, for all the metrics that are in essentially the contract. I think you will find that they're not systematically finding their way to scrutiny and around the organisation. I might be wrong, but that's the question you would look at, right? You're not going to comment on what the number is. You're just going to say, is the governance there? And all of these things that should be happening per a contract actually being, are they being delivered? Is that right?
Thank you. Yeah, contractual compliance and through how it's being measured and monitored. There is a piece of work which is not yet published, but will be in Thanet's audit committee papers in a couple of weeks, and you'll see the kind of things that we're picking up in exactly that way. So that's actually an in-house service, but we're still auditing it and saying these are the things that are missing in the governance processes. Thank you.
And when we have that audit, you're welcome to come back, email me, and we'll get you on the list to come back to talk on those, to ask questions on those audits. I've got a couple of questions, but to officers, I wouldn't be a good chair of audit if I don't raise a slight concern that we've got three limited assurances and then a no, and then that was turned into a limited assurance. I think this committee needs to have sight on if there's going to be limited assurances in the next quarterly report, and then ask questions on how we are looking at our departments and how it's functioning before an audit is carried out, and not there could be a perception from the general public that are we waiting for an audit to find to give a determination, give recommendations, and then we carry out those recommendations, because I have assurance and no concern with the manager response. Now the manager's response is we accept this audit and we will be doing X, Y, and Z to rectify this. So I don't have any concern with the direction of travel. I would like to see less limited assurances, which all officers do. So I think for this committee, we just need to have sight of that moving forward. So good discussion, mainly on Councillor Watkins and Councillor Harvey's one of their favourite subjects, Kanenko, and there'll be an additional audit coming back on that. So you're welcome to come and discuss that. So we are going to be noting the report, and can we do that by general assent? Thank you. We move on to item 8, and that's the capital investment and treasury management strategies, page 291 and 331 of your packs. And that's to consider, do I need to see this every time? Nikki Mills' report, finance and procurement, because I think every single report is yours. And we've got Oksana Ivanova to make the introduction.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Here is to present the Council's annual Treasury Management Strategies for the financial year 26-27, which we submit to the Audit Committee annually for the approval. These strategies comprise of the Treasury Management, the Capital and Non-Treasury Investment Strategies, and the Minimum Revenue Provision Statement. These strategies set out how we manage Council's money, including our day-to-day cash flow, our borrowing needs, long-term capital projects, and any investments we hold. They make sure we follow SIPFA code and guidance, we're properly managing the risk and remain financially sustainable. Our Treasury Management Strategy explains how we plan and monitor cash, borrowing, and investments mainly. And our priority always been security and liquidity, keeping public money safe and making sure we can access cash when needed. This strategy also covers how we will fund the approved capital programme and how we monitor borrowing levels throughout the following year. The minimum revenue provision statement explains how the Council sets money aside each year to repay the debt we use to fund our capital projects, and the aim of MRP policy is to make sure we repay borrowing over the same period that the assets we invest in provide benefits. This keeps our approach sustainable and aligned with the national guidance. Capital strategy provides a high-level picture of our major projects forecasted for 2026-27 to 2028-29, and the way they will be financed. It also includes the prudential indicators, which show whether our plans are affordable and sustainable. The non-treasury investment strategy sets out how the Council invests not just for financial return, and it covers two main types of investments: service investments, which help local communities, and commercial investments, which generate income. Council owns a small portfolio on the commercial investments of property worth 1.8 million. And very important is that the Council is not planning to invest in any more of the commercial property purely for profit, because doing so, as per the SIPFA code, will restrict us in borrowing from PWLB. So to summarise, our treasury management strategies are designed to ensure that we manage our finances effectively and that we comply with regulations. Each of the strategies include an economic update by our Treasury advisors. Arlene Close, these economic updates offer valuable insight into the current market, into the interest rate forecast and economic trends that may impact financial decisions. Thank you very much, and we are happy to take questions you may have.
Thank you. Before we pass to the floor for a debate, this is to recommend A, that the attached Treasury Management Strategy for 26-27 be approved, that the attached Minimum Revenue Provision Policy be approved, C, that the attached Non-Treasury Investment Strategy for 26-27 be approved, and D, that the attached Capital Strategy for 26-27 be approved. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any questions? Everyone's avoiding my eye, and I think we'll note this one down as I don't have any questions on this. So we'll just pop in the diary where usually I ask questions on everything. I don't, so we'll just summarise that we don't have any questions, and this is a recorded vote.
And that's agreed unanimously, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. We move on to item 9, 25-26 half-year Treasury Management Report, page 332, 342. And again, this is to note Nicky Mills's report. Oksana Ivanova, would you like to introduce this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to report that our Treasury Management activities for the first half of 25-26 have been delivered fully in line with the approved strategy and all of the relevant CIPFA requirements. The report confirms that we are compliant with all Treasury indicators and we have managed both borrowing and investments prudently throughout the period. We continue to follow our planned approach of borrowing only when needed. This shows that we manage our cash carefully and we do not take on debt unless it's needed. All investments complied with our security and liquidity priorities. We also complied on all key indicators under the Treasury Management, CIPFA 2021 Treasury Management Code. The only single temporary breach relating to unsecured bank investments was due to timing on the day, but this was promptly corrected next morning and should not be considered as a policy failure. In summary, Chair, our Treasury activities for the first half of the year were well managed, fully compliant and in line with the strategy set out for 25-26. Thank you very much and happy to take questions.
Thank you. Open this up for any discussion and comments. I wondered how long I could stay silent before it got awkward. Obviously not long enough. Okay, I have some questions. If we look at table 3, there's a borrowing position, September 25, 23 million, 1 year maturity. I understand later on, or we've just covered it, that we are looking at short-term loans whilst the interest rate is coming down. So I'm just wondering, are we looking to refinance those? Table 4, Treasury investment position to banks, it's 2.26% return from our investment. I'm just wondering, why are we not getting more from that? We have loans to outside bodies. So what's the interest rate on those, please? Shall I go on?
Thank you, Chair. No, I can take those. So the first question on the borrowing position and refinancing of the short-term loans. Yes, we expect to refinance the borrowing, but this is only when and if it's needed. So the short-term borrowing allows us flexibility in interest rates. Therefore, we reduce interest costs. And also, we are not locking ourselves into longer periods of high interest rates for PWLB loans. So, yes, the answer is yes on the first question. The second one was on the 2.26% return, and this is purely because this is not a money market fund. This is the call account, which is a saving account, which is used by the council as a buffer, where we can access money immediately throughout the 24 hours. So that's we never keep high levels of funds in that account. This is only used for short-term buffer for urgent or same-day payments. As the funds are instantly accessible, the return rate on those will be a lot lower than in the usual investment funds. So yeah, that's
And the loans to outside bodies, the interest
yes.
rate on that.
Yeah, so the loans to outside bodies, the main loan is to external Kent County Cricket Club, and the remaining maturity of it is 11.7 years with the interest rate 4.49%. The interest rate was set at the time the loan was agreed, and it is based on the market commercial borrowing rate at the time the loan was agreed.
Okay, thank you. Two more. We've got a 1.84 million commercial property investment. Is that Riverside? It wasn't listed.
Thank you, Chair. No, this is our one and only commercial investment, 9 St George's Street.
And table 5, when you mentioned it when we went over the limit for unsecured investment with banks and building societies, and that's 5 million limit. Now, are we putting in, obviously there was a sequencing issue there, but we've got a target, and it's unfortunate that we didn't conform to that target. Are we putting in processes to reduce the likelihood of that happening again? Because obviously, what's the point of targets if it's like, oh, we only went over it by a day?
Thank you, Chair. We wouldn't consider this as a failure of the policy or following the processes. Unfortunately, we can't forecast the timing of the payments of the receipts, especially when it's controlled by the external external bodies. So we have a cut-off times for the investments, and usually it is as early as 11 o'clock in the morning. So if the payment comes in late, we have the options of either leaving it in the current account or moving it into the so-called savings account, where we would have a small return on the money overnight. But this was corrected the following morning, and this amount was invested in a higher return fund. So we do not propose to increase this limit of 5 million because we are following advice from our Treasury Management advisors, Arlene Close, and this is not showing the weakness in the process. This is just this cut-off times, which we just simply couldn't do anything else on it.
Okay, thank you. I think we can note the report by general assent. Thank you. We will now move to item 10, governance matrix for council-owned companies, page 343 to 348 of your packs. This is a report from, not Nicky Mills, Peter Davies, Joint Chief Exec, and Matthew Archer will introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Yes, I thought it would be helpful to bring a report to each of the committees that has some involvement or input into the oversight of the council-owned companies. So apologies to those who have already heard this at the Companies Advisory Committee, but I will be taking it to Scrutiny Committee as well, so that everybody who has a stake in this hopefully has slightly more awareness as a result of this report. So just to summarise, as you probably already know from the earlier conversations, the council is either sole owner or a stakeholder in 3 companies now. We wholly own the Kanenko company, and we have a stake in Partnership 1 in partnership with Dover and Thanet councils, and Stour Environmental Credits in partnership with Ashford Council. Each is run by its own management team and has a board of directors. The directors are all officers of the councils with a stake at the moment. You heard some of the declarations tonight. We have client arrangements that support the function from the council side of the operation to make sure that there is a good liaison between the company and the council as the shareholders. So Nikki is the client lead for partnership, not for Kanenko, and for Partnership 1, sorry. And Peter Davis is the client lead for Stour Environmental Credits. The matrix sets out the roles of the various committees in overseeing the company. And as you say, there is a perception of overlap. So one of the things that we've tried to do here is to clarify that through the matrix on page 347. If I just go quickly round the matrix clockwise. So Cabinet is the strategic decision maker, and it is responsible for sort of shaping the delivery of the service that it would like to see from the company. So in terms of accountability, when you're talking about performance, it's Cabinet who are ultimately accountable for the delivery of that service, and it puts the budget aside and then sets the direction for the company, and the company then is responsible for the delivery. So one of the roles it has as one of its reserved matters every year is approving the business plan, and obviously it also recommends the budget to council in order to support the delivery of that business plan. It receives 6 monthly reports on the delivery of the contracts, and in addition to that, you also have the corporate performance monitoring report at the end of each year, which not only covers obviously the work of the companies, but of the whole council. Moving on to the Companies Advisory Committee. This is a relatively new committee, and the reason it's sort of got a sort of stronger black border around it is because the focus is slightly different. So where with Cabinet you have the portfolio holder and the client lead there to sort of introduce and deal with any questions and present the reports. The attendees at the advisory committee are the company managing director or chief exec and the company directors. So it's an opportunity to talk to them directly about their experience firsthand. And this ensures that the council has, hopefully, a good oversight of the experience from the company's perspective. So it will present the annual business plan in the spring, which it then recommends to Cabinet with any comments that it might have. And then in the autumn, it receives a company, what we term a company health report, which is looking at the sort of oversight from the financial point of view, the governance, the key risks that it has identified for itself. So it has its own risk register. And each of the companies will present that in turn. So we had a meeting in December, which ideally would be a little bit earlier in the autumn, where all 3 companies were represented, and there was an opportunity for the committee to talk about the experiences of all 3. And then carrying on around the cycle, you have Audit Committee, and as the chair pointed out earlier, they're responsible for ensuring that there are robust governance frameworks in place and that they are fit for purpose and robust. I'm pleased to say that we have had recent assurance from external legal advisors as well that the arrangements that we have put in place are, in their words, appropriate. So the work of the audit committee obviously includes receipt of the audit reports in the same way that it would for a department of the council. And there's an opportunity to shape the audit plan as you've discussed, to determine what is looked at from the perspective of the companies each year. So with Partnership 1, you can see from the plan there is a substantial audit plan already in place. For Kanenko, there were plans in 27/8 to look at grounds maintenance and recycling, and obviously the 4-year plan is up for review. So perhaps that will change. We'll see. The governance arrangements for the Stour Environmental Credits Company have yet to be looked at, but that is a younger company. And we have obviously had a slight delay with the appointment of the managing director and then a vacancy, and now we have a new managing director in place who will be able to hopefully start shaping those arrangements so that it's ready for its first audit. And then finally, in terms of the work of scrutiny, the work of scrutiny for the companies is exactly the same as it is for every other department. So scrutiny has its themed meetings, and obviously the work of those companies can be incorporated into those themes. So where we have a theme on environment, or where we have a theme on services that also includes the contracts, there is an opportunity there to scrutinise the performance of those companies as reported through the KPIs. And in addition, you have the corporate plan and the annual performance monitoring, which also goes to scrutiny and provides another opportunity for scrutiny of that performance. So I think whilst there may potentially be some gaps that were highlighted today, the idea is that the governance framework that we have in place is designed to try and address them. And I think it's just a case then of making sure that what we provide within that framework meets the needs of councillors. Thank you.
Thank you for that comprehensive introduction. And for the thousands of people watching at home, I should have introduced Matthew as the head of corporate governance. So I will open this up for discussion and comment. Councillor Smith.
Couple of points really. First one is, obviously when these companies are formed, you mentioned they have their own risk registers. Are there aspects that fall under the council of a whole when you have a wholly owned subsidiary or a partially owned subsidiary in effect? Because certain things like insurance, for example, can be something that's treated as a PAN and may have a risk attached to it, which would not necessarily show on individual risk registers. So I think it may be something to look at if that's not taken into account. And the other is slicing in time going forwards. Two of the entities obviously are owned by different councils, all of which will probably cease to exist and may not cease to exist to the same unitary authority in the near future. So you may end up having issues there. And obviously Kanenko would be considerably easier given it's wholly owned by CCC. But
Thank you. Matthew.
I think the risk question we take away, and perhaps I'd defer to Nikki about where the dividing line sits between the risk register that we have and the risk register of the company, which is obviously solely focused on the needs of that company. In terms of local government reorganisation, yes, I mean all three companies will be significantly affected. Even those obviously who find themselves in the same cluster, there will be alternative arrangements potentially in neighbouring councils that are absorbed within it. So again, there'll then need to be new decisions made about what the future model looks like for each of those services, whether it should continue as a company or be something else. Obviously, they're all decisions for the future.
Thank you. Any further questions? So we will, Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is very helpful. Thanks, Matthew. I suppose when you sort of come from sort of a business background, or if you've been on the board of, say, a charity, then you look at how we're kind of overseeing and managing like a council-owned company. It's such a different world. So I found this very useful, but I was just also reflecting on the fact that it's not really ideal. And so my question is whether any other councils who have LATCOs organise themselves in the same way, whereby, and it might well be because I'm sure every council has cabinet, well, I suppose some are committee systems, but cabinet, scrutiny, audit, CAC, they're pretty regular, right? And maybe everyone in the whole country, the LATCO, ends up organising it like this. The problem is that it's so fragmented. So I'm trying to get my head around Kanenko, I have been for the last year, and I've been a councillor for 6 or 7 years now. And it's quite difficult because different pockets of information exist in the 4 different committees. And of course, none of us are on all those 4 committees. I happen to be here tonight, and that's helpful. And of course, we can go to all of them, but it's like you would tend not to go too often to the ones that you're not a member of because of restrictions then in terms of what you can say. So it's very fragmented. It becomes quite hard to run because we're not running, Kanenko runs itself, but to oversee the running of that organisation like a board of directors in a company would, or a board of trustees in a charity would, where frankly, instead of having 4 sets of meetings, everything would be discussed at one meeting at that board of trustees. If you want to know about Partnership One's performance management, you talk about all aspects, and it would probably include a bit of what's in scrutiny here and a bit from audit and a bit of CAC. And that would be an easier way, I think, for us to organise ourselves and to do our role to the best of our ability for the benefit of the residents of this district. But so my question really is there another way of doing it, given how fragmented it feels?
Before I bring Matthew in, it would be foolish of me not to mention that, Mr. Watkins, you are part of an administration that had 23 LATCOs, and now it's moved up to 32 LATCOs. And this council has far more oversight of their companies than that authority, upper tier authority. I sat on governance and audit, and I didn't see a single KPI coming through from any of those companies, but you were part of them. So it is interesting to hear that there's a challenge, that there's not enough oversight in this council where there was no oversight whatsoever with one cabinet member. But I will bring Matthew in, and I'll bring you back to on that response. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, this is partly the joys of working in a political organisation. When you look at the cabinet scrutiny audit triangle, that is classic local government. You have an administration. The administration is held to account, and you have audit looking at the governance framework to make sure it's sound. Doesn't matter whether that's a company arrangement that you're talking about or any other department. That's just how it works in a cabinet model of governance. So I think those 3 are what they are, and that's most councils across the country. The CAC element, I would say the guidance from it, I forget exactly where it came from. Local partnerships, I think. The guidance from local partnerships says it's a good idea to have a committee that has specific oversight of your companies, because otherwise, in their words, it becomes just another agenda item on a cabinet agenda. And there isn't the opportunity to perhaps talk directly to those involved with the company. So what this is trying to do is give councillors the opportunity to sort of look into their eyes and actually have a face-to-face conversation with them in a public forum, which otherwise wouldn't exist. Ours is an advisory arrangement. There are other arrangements where cabinet might devolve completely the operation to a cabinet committee, in which case you might then have a smaller sort of cohort that are looking after the arrangements instead of cabinet as a whole. I I think our preference, which just fits with the model that we've had in Canterbury for years, is that Cabinet take collective responsibility for the delivery of its services in the making of its decisions, and that's why we have the arrangement that we have here.
Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, and that is helpful actually, and thank you for that perspective. And in fact, I mean, see, the CAC is relatively new, isn't it? And maybe as that matures, that is actually going to be the one that feels most like the kind of boards that maybe some of us here who work with charities, businesses, feel you get more answers in one place and have more back and forth and get to where you want to be going. And yeah, absolutely noted. I mean, you basically said that some of this is just as it is because we are a democratic organisation. And just to say, Chair, actually I have no problem with LATCOs, and I also might well be the case that I have no concern with the oversight mechanisms that we've got. I only actually got the contract for Kanenko to review last month, so it's still actually relatively early days in exploring all of this and seeing how we can make things better. But might well be the conclusion there is enough oversight here, albeit it is very fragmented. But as Matthew just said, some of that is just how it has to be, and hopefully that CAC will prove its worth in time.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. I agree that oversight of these committees is incredibly important, and a centralisation from that committee is definitely the place for that. And then additional parts of scrutiny, it does feel fragmented, but it gives everybody the opportunity to be able to raise and make points. Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Chair. It was coming back on the oversight and the fragmentation of that point. And just to say that while I appreciate it's unlikely anyone's on all four of those oversight bodies given Cabinet, it is quite possible for councillors to be on the three committees. And indeed, there are councillors on all three committees, and that does provide a great oversight of all those areas of scrutiny. So if other councillors from other groups were concerned about that, that is an approach that could be taken and has been taken. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you. Do we have any other questions or discussion points from the floor? If we don't, this can be noted by general assent. Thank you. Noted. We now move on to item 11, Strategic Risk Register Update. Nikki Mills's report. Cheryl Ireland, Head of Finance, to introduce, please.
Thank you. Yes, so this report presents the updated Strategic Risk Register. Since it was presented to committee in October, there's been a change to one risk, and that is the trusts, relationships with trusts and other outside bodies, whereby the likelihood has increased from 4 to 5, which moves it up to a high risk of 20. And the other three remaining risks that are considered to be high remain the finance challenges, maintenance and compliance of housing stock, and local government reorganisation. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the floor? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, a couple really, but I'm concerned about the cyber incident rating on there. Obviously, we've had quite a major cyber incident not that long ago. We've also had the loss of all the health and safety records on the migration from Google to Microsoft. And I'm told as well that the planning portal still doesn't work correctly. So it could be said that we're still suffering from a cyber incident. Whereas if you go look up at the likelihood chart, and a score 3 says the council has in the past experienced problems in this area, but not in the last 3 years. I'm inclined to disagree with that and say that we certainly have. And I'm surprised that that rating hasn't changed there for the cyber incident.
Thank you. Who can come in on cyber? Nikki Mills.
Thank you, Chair. It was higher last year, and especially around the cyber time. And then we have put in place a lot of more restrictions and changed the infrastructure, which does take time to follow through. I don't know whether it would be worth, whether or not we need to, because cyber is something that has been picked up a number of times at this committee. So I don't know if you would like somebody from that department to either give a statement, because I think I've said that the last audit committee, I think I quoted it's securely secure, because I haven't got the words to articulate actually in the IT technological infrastructure of what they have actually done. So I don't know if that's worth, if you would like a statement or for them to attend, or what you would want from them to give you that reassurance for that risk.
Come on, Councillor Harvey.
It possibly would be useful, and obviously I would expect that our systems have tightened up no end, but it doesn't quite tally with the scoring table that it's still a 3. That was my point, really. I'm not sure. Perhaps it's an explanation may go over all our heads, because none of us are IT professionals, or to my knowledge, we're not. So. Yeah, I'm happy to accept that, but we all, or I assume we all, because I do get suspicious emails on a regular basis, so I think there is definitely a risk still there, but I'm happy to pass over on that point. And I just wonder whether I could question why the relationship with trusts and other outside bodies, why the likelihood has gone up on that one particularly, please.
Before we go to that, I have a suggestion on IT. When the internal auditors do a follow-up on the ICT network security limited assurance, perhaps we can have somebody from IT here and we can ask those questions. On IT, I would have, when we're looking at the mitigations for the risk, I would like somebody to cross-reference the recommendations from internal and external audit for IT to look at those mitigations on that on the table to see if there's anything that can be added to that as well. You asked about outside bodies and trust. If somebody could answer the question on that, please.
Just on the suspicious emails, there is also a programme that the IT department have, again, I'm not going to say it in the right way, but set up so that we send out testing. We all get spam, those emails that make you question, is that a real email? Is that something I should click on? So it's part of a training programme to make people think, so that they do it on the test one, and if they did click it, you would get this is not correct, you shouldn't be doing this. If you click the little hook icon at the top of the emails, which says it's for phishing, you then, if you're not sure, click that little hook icon, and then it goes to IT, and then you're saying, oh, this is suspicious, I'm not sure about it. They will check that out. If it's one of those testing emails, you'll get a little congratulations to say, well done, this was just a test that you've passed. So they're doing that to make people more aware, so that we don't get those and then click on them, so that is another layer of protection. Is our own actions is the biggest layer of protection. So that's probably why you're getting more of them, because they're testing all of us, and that's quite a big thing for that we need to protect ourselves on that. Sorry, I was just looking for the page number of where the 353.
Sorry, it was one of the
right.
few that had changed that was commented on.
Yeah, the relationship with trusts and other outside bodies. I haven't got a huge amount of detail on this, but I can get some more update. But as it says there, it's about inflation pressures and increased demand for them, that we've only got limited support as well, but they will need more. So it's our bit of our capacity as their demand is increasing, but I can get some more information and send that round afterwards.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Harvey?
Yes, I am thinking. Could I just comment on the phishing emails while we're here? Perhaps the reason I get more than most people is because I don't pass this test and get the congratulations message. Because when I try and report any mail as phishing, it comes back with an error report saying you're not allowed to do that. So I'm torn between. But that's, yeah, it's not to do with this committee anyway. I just thought I'd mention it.
So something to take up outside of this. Okay, thank you. I saw a flurry of hands. Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. On the housing demand risk on page 360, I just have a couple of questions. First relates to allocations policy that's being reviewed. I was just wondering, assuming that we get an indication of which other local authorities we will be put together with, as it's worded here, in the spring, summer of this year, we'll get some sort of indication. Is it likely that we will then get a chance to scrutinise that allocations policy once we know the direction of travel for local government reform, reorganisation, should I say? Because that would feel like, with all the demands that are quite rightly laid out here on housing demand and on our stock, it feels like that is quite a pressing thing to look at. Second question was relating to the Voids action plan, which is obviously very much related, and it's about how we free up the stock we do have. How would oversight of that action plan happen? And is that something that would come through cabinet or through scrutiny or both? A bit of guidance on that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prentice.
Unfortunately, we don't have Marie here tonight to answer in detail, but yes, I would assume we would be getting that information before on the first question. That would come back through. And on the Voids action plan, potentially that would go through scrutiny, but I will double check that and confirm.
Thank you. Councillor Smith and then Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a quick question to which good people up there may not know the answer. On the cyber, going back to the phishing incidents, do we know if our IT department put a varied level of check emails? Because in security terms, you can have ones which look very, very good and ones which are very obvious. And there's a whole stepped series that they can go through as to how difficult they are to pick up. And I would suggest that for the council, it would be good to have a mix. One, because you're training people with the easy ones, and two, the difficult ones are the ones we really don't want to get through.
Would that be a question for when we have the IT specialist coming back to this committee when there is a follow-up from the external auditors? Would you be happy with that, and then we can ask them the questions?
Indeed, I would be. I understand we're not IT experts. So, thank you.
Councillor Watkins.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick comment firstly on the climate change one, and it's obviously sad to hear that we're not going to hit the 2030 target, but having been the lead council on climate change for a couple of years, I know how tough that one is, and I'm sure everyone has worked hard to get us where we are. I just think I don't remember seeing a report of scrutiny committee on that, but that might be coming in the future. But I suspect where it says the reason that we've missed it is that we didn't get grants to decarbonise council-owned buildings. I think that's probably only one of the reasons. For instance, that didn't cover what I suspect will be a miss on the buses for park and ride, unless someone has decided, and I've not heard, that they're going to go fully electric. That would be an example of another one. Also, all of the vehicles that we use for street cleaning, grounds maintenance, waste collection, etc. So I was just going to point out that seemed a bit of a narrow reason And I don't know if someone here wrote that report, but maybe they would want to think about that being expanded out a little bit to be a bit more accurate. Just back on my favourite on Konenko, I really do think this is far from the mark, because there are a couple of points in here I just can't agree with, and I don't know how we resolve this. But for instance, it says, firstly, it says likelihood is 3. I mean, likelihood of a failure here is 5, right? As per the last item today, there are procurement issues, evidence procurement issues. So surely the likelihood must be 5. Yes, I can't say that much, right? But you know what I mean. And we'll talk about it in a future item. That should be a 5. And when we talk about the contract with Konenko has been finalised, again, there's a sort of mistake here. There are 3 contracts between the council and Konenko. Only one has been finalised, and there are 2 others. So, and they're the ones that cover grounds maintenance and public conveniences. So, that's just wrong. And I would not feel very comfortable with that kind of level of error, staying there. I don't know if you amend things on the basis of this, but I would like to think someone might mend the record there. I appreciate we're only noting this tonight, but I'd like that to be noted. Thank you.
Who would like to come back?
In relation to the 3 contracts with Konenko, my understanding that all 3 have now been signed.
Mike.
No one's told us that, and I only got an update from the cabinet member 4 or 5 working days ago, like last week. So it must be incredibly recent. Is that right?
I don't have a date, but yes, it was quite recently done. They were finalised.
But actually, that must have been done. Those contracts must be signed since this report was written.
So I think the best thing to do is, would you like to list the concerns that you would like to have in the risk register, and then whoever is the author of this risk register can then have a look to see if they can be flagged up in that risk register, and we put this back on the agenda. We note it this time, but we put it back on the agenda as an updated item.
Just to add, we have recently obtained legal advice from external solicitors, and I can explain more on our next item, but the lack of a contract was not a concern. Obviously, it's good now that they're in place, but because we had the letter of intent and very clear what the working arrangements were, they were not concerned about that.
So just coming back, what are the issues with that part of the risk register? So we can put them down, we can give it to the author to go, have these been reflected in that? And then this can come back.
That's a good idea. I just sent it to you, Dan, next day or so. Is that right?
Okay.
Cool. Cheers.
Councillor Prentice.
Thank you. This question relates to the housing delivery risk. Under controls and mitigations, it states that Star Environmental Credits has been set up, which we know, and the first credits are anticipated to be available by the end of 2025. Obviously, we're now in 2026. I haven't seen anything regarding whether we do expect those credits to be available, given that we're now in January, and obviously that will affect this risk when we next look at it at this committee. And I don't know whether that is likely to sort of go up in terms of risk or go down at the moment. Feels a bit sort of hard to judge that one.
Cheryl.
Yeah, so I can't answer about the risk because it's not my risk area, but in terms of the credits, they're available in terms of the company to be able to purchase by the end of 2025, which has happened in late November, December, but they're not available yet to sell on to the developers, which won't be until late spring, early summer, I think is the target at the moment. So there's probably just a miswording in there that could be changed to make it clearer.
Thank you. Any further points? So I think, and I'm reading the room, that we would like to have the risk register back with an officer who is an expert in risk. So because there's a lot of points that we've raised. We've raised IT, we've raised outside bodies, we've raised risk on housing, concerns about Kanenko being reflected in it, and missed targets of not getting the target by 2030 in the environmental targets. So, and we haven't had answers. We've had suggestions that we'll get answers at the end of this. So I think for this the next meeting, we have this back and have somebody come forward to answer those questions. That would be the request from the chair. Councillor Auld.
I'd just like to go back to Councillor Prentice's point about the environmental credits, because I recall that at the last planning meeting, there was a planning application where we were told that because it didn't meet biodiversity net gain, that they would be purchasing environmental credits, and those environmental credits would have to be within our district. So if that's not available for some reason, I think we need to know about that fairly urgently.
Councillor Prentice.
Yeah, Chair. I mean, it's really just supporting the points that have been made by yourself and by Councillor Auld. I think, given the risks we do have, I'm not wanting to create lots of work, not suggesting we create lots of extra workload for our officers who are, I know, working hard with a number of pressures on them. But I'd like to, I'd be quite happy to see this risk register come back to us every meeting, just because there is so much that we are needing to keep abreast of. And I think if we were to drop the ball on some of these things, I think it would be it would reflect quite badly on us, and we would lose track of a lot of things. So I think we could probably be smart about the way we look at some of these, because obviously some of them that are lower in risk and lower risk profile, if you like. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but they don't need quite so much consideration. But some of those really do need that oversight, and if this committee can add value, then that would be good.
I'll just come back. How often do we see this risk register?
At every meeting.
So
I thought we did, actually, so that's quite reassuring to know.
So we'll have this at the next meeting, but the request is for the topics that we've asked, we would like an officer to be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, it's about having the answers, and no disrespect, we just didn't have all the right people in the room tonight, and it's just about having the right people in the room who can address those risks, because I know that some of these things get discussed in other committees, a bit like Kanenko. Audit feels like a good place to be looking at where we need to put a bit more attention on something.
Thank you. Come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the risk register comes every meeting and gets updated. The process of it is that the lead officer will review the score based on all of their specialist expert knowledge of that service area. Management team reviews the risk register every week, and it's all discussed to see if there's any new risks and if there's any anything coming up, bubbling up in the future. Management team and directors will review the scoring of it, and so that's debated and discussed to see whether or not that's the appropriate level, and then it's presented here. Sometimes when there's no change in the scoring, I don't think there's one officer, and the risk register comes under my remit, but there's not one officer that would be able to answer all of those questions. We can take those questions away and we can get answers for you, but without knowing what areas you would like or what you're going to ask, and there's quite, like you said, there's quite a few areas tonight that have been asked about, we wouldn't know who to come to the meeting. Happy for you to ask any questions beforehand that we can then bring the officers along. We've got quite a number of officers here tonight, and it's just potentially not fallen on the right officers that are here for you to be able to answer those. So if there's any questions that you can send through in advance, then we can get the right officers here and also get those answers to those questions in advance as well for you. Thank you.
Okay, and I would presume that an IT officer will be present when there's the internal audit, re-audit of the IT area, and we'll have a housing officer. So when we have the risk register every committee, we can then ask those specific questions of those officers when they are present. It's just an officer who focuses on environmental issues. Maybe Councillor Watkins wants to send them through, and we can get answers for that, as well as the Kanenko ones. Okay. Good discussion. This is to note by general assent. Can we note it, please? Thank you. We move on to item 12, and it's the regulation of investigatory, I said it, I usually trip over that, Powers Act 2000. That's pages 373422. This is a report by Jan Geiler, the head of legal and monitoring, and she's the monitoring officer. If you would like to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this relates to covert surveillance powers available to local authorities. Legislation requires that members consider this matter once a year. It was last before the Audit Committee in January 2025, and quarterly verbal updates have been provided during the year. The last time it was at this committee, some amendments have been made to the policy to reflect some changes made by government to the Code of Practice. Having undertaken a review of the policy and the Codes of Practice recently, there are no amendments required to the version approved by full council back in February 25, and it remains current. No applications have been made since 2015. It's not something we use at all lately, but of course we keep up to date with the reviews to ensure that the policy is there, giving an overview of the codes of practice.
Thank you. I open this up to discussion. Any comments? Usually we haven't used the Act, and there's usually not a discussion because we haven't used the Act. So let's note this by general assent. Noted. Thank you. Item 13, Kanenko procurement update. That's page 423 and 424. There's a summary in the agenda which reflects the information available in the public domain, and the full report will be considered in private session. I will bring in Jan Geiler again to introduce the public part of the report and to speak on it.
I think it speaks for itself really, just briefly, brings the matter back to Audit Committee following some comments made on the 2nd of July. I think it would be difficult for me to comment further in public, and I would suggest that if everyone's agreeable, that we move to consider whether to consider this in private.
Okay, then. If there's anything that we can discuss in open session, but it sounds like we need to go private for this, I need to first speak on the date of the next meeting, which is 7 p.m. Wednesday, the 1st of April 2026. Item 14, any other urgent business to be dealt with in public? There's none. So then item 16, exclusion of press and public, to resolve that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public to be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business on the grounds that there will be disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act of the Freedom of Information Act, or both, Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Watkins, thank you. We need to take a vote.
If everyone's happy.
General assent. We will now close the meeting and thank you. And we'll have a short 5-minute adjournment whilst we make sure that we've turned everything off. Thank you.